Does Donald Trump have a plan C for Iran? A plan D? He's tried attacks, talks, he's tried a ceasefire. And now again, the U.S. has been striking Iran hard with some of the most intense attacks of the war on military bases, drone storage sites, and key infrastructure. Iran has retaliated, launching drones at U.S. bases in the region. But Trump says the countries are also pursuing diplomacy. In a social media post, he said, "The Islamic Republic of Iran has asked us to continue talks. We have agreed to do so, but the United States has stated to them in no uncertain terms that the ceasefire is over." Let's break this down now with Bryan Clark. He's a defense analyst at the Hudson Institute, a Washington-based conservative think tank focused on security and foreign policy. Good to see you, Bryan.
Good to see you. Thank you for having me on.
So, Bryan, first of all, is the U.S. actually doing anything different this time?
Well, they are doing something a little bit different. They've really ramped up the number of attacks over the last couple of days. So it's not like this small scale attacks that we had in the immediate aftermath of the MOU being signed. But they've also gone after some infrastructure targets, which was unusual. That was not something they had been doing before. So I do think that the size and the nature of the strikes are a little bit different over the last day or so than we had in the previous weeks.
And with those infrastructure targets, there are some questions as to whether those might even amount to war crimes, are there not?
There is some question about if you do attack a civilian target that has no military utility, then that's considered potentially a war crime. And we see that in Russia's attacks on Ukraine, where those are often going after civilian targets that have no military value. I think in this case, the U.S. would argue that it was going after infrastructure that was potentially being used to move military forces like the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard Corps, and even some of their leadership. So arguably that would be a potential military target that the U.S. is going after. But the message might have been intended to convey to the Iranian leadership that the U.S. might go to escalate against these civilian targets. It might be a way of pressuring them in the negotiations.
Now, Trump says the memorandum of understanding, the ceasefire agreement, is over, written in all in caps, as we saw there. Is it really over?
Well, arguably, maybe it was never really in place in the first place, because we did have attacks occurring even after the MOU was signed. So the ceasefire has really never been in place for very long, and we've had periodic engagements between the two countries. So it's hard to tell whether the ceasefire is really ever in place. It's just a matter of reducing and increasing the intensity of attacks. I guess you could say that the pause that we were experiencing is certainly over with the scale of the most recent attacks, and then the retaliation by Iran, which suggests that passage through the Strait of Hormuz is going to be very contested, and that our allies or partners across the Gulf are probably going to be experiencing more attacks from Iran.
I want to pull in a clip now of Donald Trump from earlier this week at the NATO summit. Trump called Iranian leaders scum. Let's take a listen.
In one day, all of their anti-aircraft things are gone. That doesn't mean they're not going to get a plane at some point, but all of it's gone. Everything's gone. Their leaders are gone. They had leaders, they're gone, and they had another set of leaders, they're gone. Now they have another set of leaders, they may be gone. Who knows? And you know what? I may be gone too, because I'm their number one target. It's out all over the place. I'm their number one because they're scum. That's the way they act, and that's the way they've done it for 47 years.
So Trump calling Iranians scum, saying they want to kill him. There's some speculation that may have been why he changed planes on his way back from the summit. Bryan, is the U.S. now in a stronger place to negotiate with Iran since these new strikes?
In a way, I guess that they might be, because the Iranians started the attacks against shipping over the last week or so because they were trying to reassert their control over the Strait of Hormuz, because the MOU had said that there should be free passage through the strait, and in return for that, Iran would get access to its frozen funds, and it would have sanctions relief its oil sales. So there should be a lot of money flowing into Iran as a result. Iran was saying that they had not received that funding necessarily, and that the sanctions relief hadn't really been actuated in practice. And so they were choosing to exert their control over the Strait of Hormuz to try to force the U.S. to follow through on all of its parts of the agreement. So the U.S. now, with this most recent set of strikes, has made clear that it's not going to provide any more funding, any more access to money. The retaliation that the U.S. had against the shipping attacks was to attack Iran itself. So maybe that it strengthens the U.S. hand, because it shows the Iranians that they don't really have, there's not going to squeeze any more out of the United States in these negotiations. I guess that's the one way in which the U.S. position might be stronger.
And the MOA, I mean, a lot of people saw this as not a great victory for the U.S. There were so many concessions to Iran with the unfreezing of assets and this big rebuilding fund. Do you think that these newest attacks might be, in a way, Donald Trump trying to reset the terms?
Oh, definitely. These attacks on both sides have been a way of pursuing the negotiations in another form, because Iran wasn't getting what it wanted necessarily financially from the United States. So it asserted its control over the shipping lanes. It also felt like maybe its ability to control the shipping lanes was slipping away. So they needed to reassert the fact that they did have that control, which is something that they're trying to pursue through the negotiations. And on the U.S. side, they're trying to show the Iranians that the Iranians aren't going to get any more out of the United States. I think the negotiating position of the U.S. was, we gave you a lot in the MOU, and that you should be happy with that, and we should be able to proceed on. But I think Iran's normal position in any negotiation is to try to squeeze more out of the other party. So that's what they've been trying to do with these renewed attacks against shipping.
The U.S. rhetoric in this war has been about negotiating from a point of strength, meaning both talks and military force. Do you think there's another option? Does Trump have like some kind of plan C, or is it just going to be more of the same?
We might be on plan D or E at this point, but
right.
I think the one other option that he has is to defend shipping and escort shipping and go back to the model that the U.S. had used, for example, during the tanker war between Iran and Iraq back in the late 70s, early 80s. The U.S. could do that. They could protect shipping, escort it out, get shipping levels back up to maybe where they were over the last week, which is about 30 to 35 ships a day, about a third of the normal, but at least better than what we had. The U.S. could do that, and that would be a way of weakening Iran's position, because Iran's main lever at this point is control over the Strait of Hormuz, and they're using that to try to advance their efforts in the negotiations. So if the U.S. could undermine that, then Iran has a weaker position.
Now, the U.S. said it struck a number of targets in Iran in the last days, but there have also been attacks the U.S. has not claimed. Do you have any sense of what's going on there?
Well, I think there's other actors at play, right? So Israel is still involved in this conflict, even though they've been mostly pressing their case against Hezbollah up in Lebanon and also in the West Bank. But it could be Israeli strikes that are being done in concert with U.S. forces. So the U.S. won't claim them, but the U.S. is aware that they're going on, and they're deconflicted from the U.S. It could also be other countries in the Gulf. So the UAE in particular has retaliated against Iran previously during this war. So it could be other Gulf countries are taking the fight to Iran because they view Iran's continued attacks against them as something they can't live with. I think one thing their countries are concerned about is, even after these negotiations are finished, Iran still retains this ability to reach out and attack Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Bahrain and the UAE. And those countries may not want to sit idly by, and they may want to try to demonstrate to Iran that they have an ability to respond, which may deter further Iranian attacks.
I want to talk a little bit about what's going on inside Iran. This week at the funeral of former Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, we got some insight into where Iran is right now. There are videos posted online that appear to show Iranians harassing their president and foreign minister. A lot of hardliners in the country are angry at them for even agreeing to talks with the U.S. So there's that going on. At the same time, the new Supreme Leader, Mujtaba Khamenei, did not show up for his father's funeral, as a lot of people thought he might. He still hasn't been seen for months, so there's a lack of clear leadership there. He's not present, apparently not giving guidelines on whether to take a more hawkish course or a more diplomatic course with the U.S. What does that kind of inner turmoil mean for the war and for U.S. strategy?
Well, it makes the negotiations more difficult, right? And that's part of why you see, for example, we get the MOU, they start trying to move the money over to Iran in, as the U.S. part of that MOU. And then you have Iran respond by attacking shipping. And that's because you've got the hardliners coming up to the fore saying, we don't want to lose control over the strait, even though the diplomats had reached an agreement about restoring access via the MOU. So you see the kind of ebb and flow of the different factions inside of Iran manifesting as changes on the battlefield, right? Because we end up with these attacks when the hardliners want to reassert their control, and at the same time you get the diplomats wanting to step up and try to improve Iran's economic position by restoring access to money and restoring its flow of oil out of the Strait of Hormuz.
There's analysts and political actors for months now have been talking about how erratic the U.S. side is, how unpredictable, how there's not a clear end game. Would you say that it is equally so on the Iranian side?
I don't know if I wouldn't say it's equally so. I think Iran's position is always to maximize its leverage in any negotiation and to protract it as long as possible. That has been their method of operation for decades. So the U.S. negotiators should have expected when they went into this, if they were very conciliatory up front, like in this MOU, Iran was just going to try to squeeze more out of the U.S. They would view that as actually weakness on the U.S. part and attempt to get more out of them in subsequent negotiations, which is exactly what Iran has tried to do. And Iran's been, and the hardliners have been in Iran have added to that by mounting these attacks on shipping. So they're trying to underline their maximalist negotiating position by showing that they could still cut off access to the Strait of Hormuz, and that the U.S. needs to come across with more compromises.
Well, this is absolutely not over yet. Bryan Clark from the Hudson Institute, thanks so much for talking to DW.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me on.
What do you think? How will these latest attacks change the outcome of the war? Let us know in the comments. And please remember to like this video if you found it useful. If you haven't already, you can also subscribe to our channel. I'm David Levitz in Berlin. Thanks for watching.